that we've done. This is going to be the first of hopefully a few interviews that we've got with some racing drivers, past and present. And we're starting with a bit of a bang this evening. We've got two racing drivers for you, as you've seen advertised on our various social media pages and feeds. We've got Bradley Gravett, who is in the Mini Challenge UK this year, which is in support of the British Touring Car Championship on the TOCA package on ITV4. So check your listings for that. And we're very happy to have Robb Gravett, the 1990 British Touring Car Champion, who is going to be joining us very soon. And I'm just going to invite him here on Instagram. Hopefully this will work. Do bear with me. As I said, this is the first time we've done this, so it's a bit of a suck it and see type situation. And I'm just trying to add Rob and invite him to our chat. We are trying to invite him, and it doesn't seem to be working. So for those of you who are tuning in on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, we've just gone a bit funny on Instagram. Very colourful. There we go. For those of you who are watching on Twitter and Facebook, thank you to everyone who's logged in so far. We're just waiting for Rob to join us, and we're just trying to figure out how it's going to work on Instagram, because this is not quite working as was planned. Good evening, Kev Lamb, Chris Cuthbert, Helen, thank you. Kevin Whitewood, Chris Cuthbert, and Simon Beale as well. Thank you for joining us early doors. We're just trying to get this to work on Instagram, and it doesn't seem to be. We are still waiting for Rob. So, for those of you who have been following us for a while, we're all about motorsport news, photos, opinions, all kinds of things, and we've got on board with a few young drivers who are who we're working alongside to help secure some backing, do some promotional work for, and all that good stuff. So that's where we are at the moment. We've got a few things lined up in the pipeline, and I'm still trying to get this to work on Instagram, which is quite annoying, as it doesn't seem to be connecting. Hello, Emily Davis and Matthew Clark. Thank you for joining. And we have been joined, I'm delighted to say, by Rob and Bradley. Good evening, guys. How are you?
How's it going? Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, Richard. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Haven't quite got it working on Instagram just yet, but
no worries. You can see us all right. We're sort of half in shot here. I think you can. I'm not sure.
What I'll do, no one wants to see me, so I'm going to take my...
That's not true. That's better. There we are. Now we can move out of it.
Yeah, that's it. Otherwise, I'm having to touch my son's legs.
Let's try and make this a little bit bigger. Can't do it. There we are.
You've gone quiet now.
I think you may have dropped out on us. He's dropped out. Rich, you dropped out on us. There we are. You're back.
Yeah.
Stay with us.
Okay. It looks like people are going to have to talk to me as well. Never mind.
Good.
So, yes, guys, thank you very much for coming along and having a chat. It's been obviously very, very good speaking with you in the last few weeks, just to get all this together. So thank you for coming on board. Much appreciated.
It's our pleasure.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem at all. Right. Well, hopefully, this will be the first of two chats we have. It obviously depends on how we go and how many people tune in, of course. But first up, how have you been treating with the coronavirus lockdown? How have you been dealing with it? It's been something a bit out of the ordinary, isn't it?
Well, I have to say that it's something that's made us stay at home. It's actually quite fun, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Not good for business, unfortunately, but apart from that, no, it's been actually very nice. I don't actually know where all the time goes to be honest with you, but I think the world that we have now is never going to be the same again. That's what I think, anyway.
No, I think we're going to have to get used to a brand new normal, aren't we? Certainly with regards to going motor racing, it's going to be very, very different, and obviously on the business side as well. So hopefully people haven't been too badly affected, but yeah, we'll have to get used to a new normal, as you say, I think. So
having been to a few race circuits post sort of lockdown, it's been quite unusual actually. Everyone's sort of wearing face masks and keeping distant, and it's we thought it'd be quite tricky to do, but actually when you sort of get into it, it is very different. You're absolutely right. It's very different to be there, and yeah, everyone's sort of keeping away, and yeah, it's very unusual to be fair, because there's no crowds there or anything. Very, very strict on numbers going into the circuits, and quite so as well.
And I guess, you know, from a driver's point of view, obviously just from the outside looking in, we don't really get a feel of what it's like around the paddock and in the pits and all the hoo-ha that goes on behind the scenes. It's obviously you having been at a track recently up at Snetterton. I guess you're in a much better position than any of us to observe all the differences and all the changes that have gone on.
So behind the scenes, it feels kind of normal, other than the fact that everyone's sort of wearing face masks. And as a driver, when you're actually driving, you don't really see much of anything. You're kind of so focused on what you're doing, you don't generally see what's going on around you. You're just sort of focusing on the corners and getting things right, or trying to.
Sure.
So the back end side of it sort of feels the same. But yeah, I mean, it is different for sure. I mean, very strict entering the circuit. You know, when you're there, you've got to keep your distance, quite rightly so. Face mask where possible. You know, it's very, yeah, I think it's important. But what it's doing is it's keeping the cars on the circuit. So everyone's trying to do their bit for sure to keep apart, because, you know, if we start, you know, messing with the rules and things like that, then we could see a hold on motorsport again, which obviously we don't want. We want to keep it on the road as much as possible.
I personally think the strangest thing when we were doing the driver changes is that once the driver came out and they were refueling, before we went back into the car, they went in and cleaned all the car, the steering wheel, the gear lever, and all the bits and pieces. And so we had, I think it was 4 minutes to do driver change. And I think we should do that all the time, personally, especially when people get out and they're all sweaty. Perfect thing to do. So I think we're learning from it.
Change the seat and the steering wheel, dry them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that may well be the new way forward. I think it's certainly going to have to be looked at, because especially in the endurance racing where there are driver changes.
Sure. It does make you think very differently, doesn't it? I mean, it really does. And I think if we're sensible, I think people have got really together with us around the world, but particularly in the UK. And people are more aware of cleanliness, what to do, obviously keeping their hands clean and all those other things, which I don't think necessarily a lot of people maybe did previously. I think it's made people think very differently. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it's a good thing.
No, absolutely. No, definitely. It just changes the mindset.
Exactly.
Well, as you know, we've got a few questions that have come in from various social media things. Apologies, Bradley. There are quite a few for Rob here. I think we've got a few of the touring car fans, but we'll try and address them all. Okay, the first one, it's sort of mainly for me, really. Rob, how did you first get into motor racing? I mean, what was it, something that you were into from when you were very young, or was it just something that you kind of just sort of got to, like, talked into, or something that you fancied trying? Or
it's a really interesting thing, because in our family, there was never any sport, certainly no motorsport, and I got into this desire to want to go and race motocross bikes, which is what I started on. So I was 11 or 12, I think, when I first started, and I started screaming around on a little NSU quickly, 2-speed sort of motorbike, screaming around the house.
Is that the one with the pedals?
Yeah, had pedals on as well. And I talked my father into buying a BSA Bantam, which was an ex-GPO delivery bike apparently, that's been made into a motocross bike, and I went racing. I don't know why, I really don't know why. And then at 15 I became British champion, won numerous championships in motocross, represented England in the World Championships, which was brilliant. But I would do the main feature race when I was doing World Championships, and then also do the support race in the same day as well. So I just wanted to do as much racing as I could. And then I started a business when I was very young, 17 years of age, and I thought that I should be more sensible. So I retired fairly early. I was probably in my 20s, very early 20s, when I stopped racing. I then had a client who kept saying to me, "Oh, you should do a race in a car." And I had no interest in doing races in cars until I sat in one. And the moment I sat in one, then I wanted to do it. So and it sort of went on from there, really.
Something kind of clicked.
Yeah. So that's been my life. Screaming around on race circuits, going as fast as I can, pouring an inordinate amount of money into the floor, but actually being serious about it. There was a lot of development went on behind the scenes, actually in touring cars. When we did work with Shell were very good to me, they supported me. We did a lot of development on fuels and oils and other bits and pieces with them. So a lot of that stuff actually ends up in the motor vehicles that we drive today.
Okay, right.
But also, you saying about how the motorsport wasn't in sort of your upbringing or anything like that. I think, wasn't your father a driver and both your grandfather was a driver for trade, some form or another?
He was a salesman. So I suppose if he raced around trying to get lots of sales, he'd be screaming around the roads doing it.
Yeah, he was racing around the M25, but not very quickly.
Except the M25 wasn't there, so he's probably going faster.
Of course, yeah.
And you can go on the M25 now. That's a different subject that we could talk about another day, isn't it?
No, sure.
But no, I mean, there was no sport. I don't know where it came from, but that's just what I wanted to do. And it appears, without wishing to put words into Bradley's mouth, he wants to do the same thing. And it's not for me that he wants to do it, he wants to do it for himself, which I think is important. No,
absolutely. That sort of leads on to the second question we got here, which I think has pretty much been answered. And it was for Bradley for, was it your choice to follow what your dad's been doing? Or was there a bit of cajoling there?
I get this question quite a lot, actually, and it's all come from me. I think Dad has said on many occasions that he's never really pushed me into it. I think for many reasons why. I think probably financially, probably the main reason. I mean, having grown up around the sport certainly influenced me, but I made the decision myself that I wanted to do it, and certainly recently as well. It's sort of really come back to me. I've really wanted to get in a car the last sort of 12 months, forever really, but the last 12 months I've really put myself out and really trying to make it happen. But no, it's all come from me. I have been slightly, growing up around it as a kid and seeing it. It was in touring cars in the golden era. My fondest memories were probably '97 when Dad was driving in was it the Honda Accord?
Yeah. The
white and yellow Rocket Cargo, and I just remember I was just small. Everything's big, and I just remember the people, the crowds, and the motorhomes, and all the bits and bobs that go behind the scenes, and it was awesome. It was really cool. So having seen that as a kid and growing up around it, I think it probably influenced me, but ultimately, it's been my decision to get back into the sport, and it's made me hungry as well. The more I've not been able to have it, the more I want it, and then when I do get in a car, I push for everything that I can get, and I'm just trying to maximise it as much as possible. That's the way I see it. Because it is a privilege. I mean, it's very much a privilege, and certainly for me as well. It's not certainly being given to me. I'm really having to work. We're all working very hard.
Of course.
As I'm sure you're more than aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you've got a few more questions. Actually, a few of these are from the guy who did that lovely painting behind you, Oliver Taylor. Yeah. So I'm sure he's tuning in. I haven't got a little ticker here, but I'm sure he is. He sent quite a few questions in, so these are all his. Firstly, how did you go about setting up the Trackstar team with Mike Smith? And how hard is it to set up a team? Because I think a lot of people might have that idea in their head, of, oh, I'd love to go racing and set up my own team, but don't know how to go about it. So,
well, firstly, let me say that Oliver is a brilliant artist.
Absolutely.
He's applauded massively, and we have one of his pictures behind here of the RS500, which I think was one of his original paintings that he did. We subsequently got another one, which I think you may have seen previously. It's certainly been up on the site, some of the sites. So he does a fantastic job. So, you know, I'm very proud to be associated with having some of his work around us.
And he is a huge fan of yours. He said it a few times. So.
Well, in answer to your question, Mike and I were good friends. We met in 1987 when we were doing production saloon car racing. He was in a Sierra Cosworth, and I was in a Sierra Cosworth, and we were, if you like, foes. But as the season went on, we became friends, and basically he was a very competitive individual. He was very good to me, and I think together we worked very well together, because it takes a team. I think with motorsport, what's very important is it's just not one person. It is very much a team sport. That you need people to head the sport to enable you to facilitate certain things. So in 1987, going back to 87, I was fortunate enough to win 2 championships back to back in the same year, which I'd also done in 1986. So in 2 years, I won 4 championships, which is, as far as I know, has never been done before. So I won the Unirock Production Saloon Car Championship and the Munro. And anyway, so we became good friends. In 1988, at the beginning of 88, I had no drive. So I won everything. And we both decided we would go to Group A, which was the pinnacle of touring car racing at the time. Mike managed to get himself into the factory BMW team with ProDrive, and obviously his teammate was Frank Sidner. And at the start of the season, I had nothing. I mean, I remember going to the first race at Silverstone, and nobody knew this, but I cried, because I thought, what more do I have to do to get into one of these cars? Wow. I did. I actually cried about it, because I just didn't know what to do. And then a guy called, and you'll know Jerry Marney, who was very friendly with Peter Hall, who half-owned Ralph's ICS, frightened himself when he was driving the car at Alton Park in the wet, and decided he didn't want to drive the RS500 Group A car, the ICS car. So I had a call, and they asked me to test the car, which I did at Thruxton. I then got offered the job, which I drove the car, and I was very fortunate because Shell financed my position in that car as well.
Right.
But there was a deal behind when I drove the car. Mike and I were in similar situations that we weren't allowed to win or beat our teammates, and this is definitive, both of us were in the same position. I wasn't allowed to overtake Andy. The only time I was allowed to win was if he broke down or had gone off.
Right.
When I got to Silverstone, I thought, well, anybody is here. So I overtook him, which was probably the worst thing I ever did, but maybe it was the best thing I ever did. So I overtook him. That didn't go well, actually. Maybe I shouldn't have done, but I did. And then I had a call from Shell. Call came from Shell Australia to Shell UK and asked if I would like to drive the car, the third car, with Dick Johnson in Australia.
Yeah.
That was on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and I had to be at the circuit by the Friday. So I got on a plane and I flew over there.
Wow.
That's how the relationship started with Dick. So we got very friendly. He was very good to me. A guy called Neil Lowe was running the team at the time. And I did that event, came back again. I finished the rest of the season, but what was clear, I did the TT, for example, and in qualifying I was the quickest car. When I went out for the warm-up on race day, it's like I had half the power because all my boost was being turned down.
Oh, correct. Okay.
So it was never going to work, was it? Because
no.
It wasn't going to work. So Mike and I decided that what we might like to do is to run our own team, which is how Trackstar started. I flew over to see Dick a number of times and managed to buy 2 cars from him, which were some of the older cars that he had. One was a left-hand drive, which he had to make into a right-hand drive. We then flew them over in the back of a 747, because I'd had a relationship with Virgin who'd supported me since 1987, so we managed to get the cars back. And I can tell you, the first race that we did, we moved into a place in Long Crendon. The first race that we didn't even have front doors on our building, because it was a brand new building that we'd gone into. What I also did when I came back from Australia is I flew to Tokyo, stopped in Tokyo, and arranged a blind meeting with Yokohama Tyres, because I wanted something different. I wanted to bring in something different. So I bought Yokohama, or we bought Yokohama Tyres into the UK, and then created, if you like, a Gucci brand and told everybody they were fantastic tyres when we put them on. I can tell you that when we did put them on, they were terrible. I mean, they were really bad. So we did a lot of development on the tyres in that year, and then those tyres did become very good tyres. Their reaction rate in developing those tyres, a lot of construction work with a guy called Bert Baldwin, who's been around the industry for years, was exceptional. And we ended up with a tyre that was very good. But you can imagine, we were running cars with 550, 600 horsepower on tyres that were only this wide. Not the tyres they've got now, if you like, with not half the power, but it's a lot less power now they're running when we ran the RS 500s. So that's how we set it up. We then had to go out and finance it, find the money, the sponsorship. I hate the conversation of sponsorship because it feels like free money. So we called it investment.
Yep.
Mike was brilliant at that. I was brilliant at bringing stuff in, and it worked very, very well. So Mike was very good to me. He was very good to me, and hopefully in return I was very good to him. So we were great friends. We did a business together, and it worked well until we had the problems later on with one of the main sponsors, which everybody knows about.
Yeah, and obviously it's a great shame that he's no longer with us, of course.
It is a great shame. I mean, it really is actually, because he was genuinely. Well, he was brilliant with the work he did. I think he was brilliant for the series because he brought more people into it. Because people followed him. He had a huge following when he did the breakfast show.
Absolutely.
Radio 1. And I did some work with him on that, and that was huge. It's not the same now, it's different, but it was at the time.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Another question here from Oliver. He said, what was the deal with the second car that you ran for Mike in the last race of 1990? He said, was it one of the Dick Johnson cars from '89, or was it a Trackstar new build, or was it a?
No, we only built one new car in 1990.
It was just the one
car that I used, and there you go with Mike again, because his immediate reaction was, "You should have that car," which was me. So he ran the '89 car, and when we built the car, the first time we tested it was at Alton Park, and it was immediately 3/10 quicker, just out of the box. It was just quicker because the chassis was tighter, and a lot of the bits that we had hung off around it were similar, but the chassis was better, and we built a very good car. It was a good car, and you need all of those things. That's what I was saying earlier on. You need a team behind you, people that you can trust, and we had some great people in that team at the time.
Absolutely, brilliant. Another one from our resident artist. Just possibly a fairly simple question. Not sure. We'll see. Out of everyone that you raced against, who did you trust most to go side by side down the Craner curves with, and who didn't you trust at all?
No one.
No one. It's probably a good answer.
It's interesting. I knew this question was going to come up, and actually, one of the most competitive drivers in touring car racing has to be Steve Soper, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
But equally, he's also one of the. Whilst he's extremely competitive, he's also very fair. And he would know, if you talk about Craner curves, if you take someone off the Craner curves, that other person is going to have a big accident. So probably out of everybody, he would be the one that I would know just how far to push it.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion. The most unsafe person would be Joe Winkelholt, who would always say he couldn't see over the bonnet and he's very sorry for hitting you. And I mean, he took me out at Donington. I had a huge accident going up the hill when I got rehired by Ford to do the World Championships in '94 it was. Just going up the hill where Nigel crashed, we went through the bridge and he just clipped the back of my car and I turned right. they say it was 130 mile an hour dead stop in 3 feet. Massive impact, which really hurt. You like the centre crash, if you like. So I saw the stars for a week, but they rebuilt that car and that was fine. But he also took me out at the World Championships when we were at Monza, where I think I was either second or third, and he turned me right on the straight. I'm just going down the straight. But he always said, because he was so short and he was sitting so low, he couldn't see over the steering wheel. So I don't really think that was true, to be honest with you.
No, it sounds a bit of a sidestep.
Notwithstanding all of that, I like Joe, lovely man, but he has caused me some pain in the past. Steve, on the other hand, actually is great fun, and so I will trust him probably more than anybody, because he knows where the line is, and it's really important. We could talk a little bit more about what goes on currently with racing, which I think is a bit silly, but anyway.
What about me?
Well, of course, this Bradley, can't trust him to ever use race car.
Goes without saying.
So beware anybody who gets anywhere near him. But anyway.
I've just seen a question pop up that's not on the little things that we ran through. Just a quick one. We do a little bit of backing for a young karting lad called Ty Cuthbert. He's very, very good, and he's going places and winning a lot of things. He's just asked, what advice would you give to a young 11-year-old karter wanting to get to the BTCC with some amazing sponsors and backers already in place? What would you say to him just to keep kicking on into the BTCC?
Well, Ty, if you're watching now, I have heard of your name, so that's a positive, isn't it, for what it's worth? So good boy for doing all that stuff and for winning and all the rest of it. What you have to do is cover your sponsors, because without those people, you come to an immediate stop unless you have a very wealthy family. So just continue doing what you're doing. Think about the forward position, and what you'll find is that you're doing a good job. To start with, it's generally relatively hard sell to get sponsors in, but if you look after those sponsors, over-deliver, generally you'll keep those sponsors and they'll carry you forward if that's where you want to go into the BTCC. So
excellent.
Good work up, Ty.
Excellent. Brilliant. Again, we're back to Oliver here. He said, your helmet you've got sitting next to you there is, to him, it's the most iconic design in all racing. He says, forget Senna, forget Mansell. He loves that one. Firstly, he wants to know if you can have one. And secondly, how did you come up with the design?
Well, let me answer the first question, because I think I've already promised you the helmet already. So I apologise, you haven't had it yet, but you will get it. So Oliver, you will get it. You've got one coming.
Right.
Secondly, this was my father, actually, because what my father said in the infancy of driving cars is that when you're in a car, people should know who's in the car. And generally, if you sit very low in a car, the only thing they can see is your helmet. And I wanted something that was different. I was always very embarrassed, not embarrassed would be the wrong word, about the name, because people didn't know the name. And so that's the reason why we've always had Gravett on the side of it. And I think, thank you for saying it is an iconic helmet. I think generally when you're in cars, it can work positively or negatively, because you can't say you weren't in the car if something goes wrong because they know it's you in the car. But being serious about it, I think is really important. And I find it quite strange when some of the F1 guys, that we're going to talk about this on another day, continually change their helmets.
Yep.
Particularly in the cars they're in now with the protective thing around their head. Because it's quite difficult sometimes to tell who's actually in the car. Is it one of the two drivers? So Bradley's now picked up on that theme, as you probably know. He's got his helmet here. He's changed the colours slightly.
There we
so
go.
it's very similar. The yellow is slightly similar. He's got green now on the helmet, as you can see. But it's retained that image, which so people should know if it's him or me in the car. Hopefully it's him more in the car than me now.
I mean, I do agree on the helmet design thing, and certainly going back to the era that you raced in the sort of late 80s and the 90s, that's probably the only one that sticks out in my mind as being a memorable crash helmet. So
it did work.
Yeah, it's definitely done the job. Another quick question that has just popped up from Kevin Whitewood, who runs the British Touring Car chat Facebook group. Knows his stuff. He said, would you do it all again regarding the BTCC? And would you have done anything different if you could do it again?
Kevin, that's easy. Well, the answer is yes. And would I do it any differently? There may have been a time when I could have done something slightly differently at the back end of 1990 going into 91. But I'm very loyalistic and I felt it was right to stay with where I was. What was quite damaging for me, whilst Ford was very good to me, I decided to stay with Ford in 91, but at the back end of 91 they pulled out. So it left me virtually high and dry. The only place I could go to was Peugeot, and that was quite a difficult situation because the team weren't ready to be running and doing cars. They really weren't ready at the time, so there was a lot of work had to be done within that team, and that might be another question I think we may have later on in that.
Yes, absolutely. I've got a question here about Dick Johnson and how that came to be involved. I think we answered that earlier on with the Bathurst trip. Did you keep track of what happened to the RS 500 that's behind you in that painting, or did you once it was gone, did you just sort of not think about it? Because it got found a few years later, didn't it? And it's been brought back to life.
It seemed to disappear, and I think it may have ended up in. I'll be corrected on this actually, because there are people better in the know than I am. But I think it ended up in Italy, or was it Portugal?
Yes, it was Italy. No, it was Italy.
Italy or Portugal, and it was then became a left-hand drive car from what I can understand. It's now been found, put back to its original state, and Zach Brown's bought that car actually.
Right.
From McLaren. And before the COVID problem that we had, I was going to drive that car at Silverstone because it's 30 years since I won the championship in that car. So that's obviously had to be postponed. I'm not sure if Silverstone is going to run it next year. If they do, that would be great. But at some stage, I will get back into that car, so I understand, and that would be interesting. Yeah, so,
that'd be something else to see. That'd be great.
Probably one of the most iconic cars, that particular car, because it did a lot of stuff around the world as well. Because we took it to New Zealand, not to New Zealand. We took it to. We did Macau with it. We did Japan with it. And we led at Macau for quite a long time. We qualified on pole in Japan at Fuji. And it didn't last very long in the race with the fuel that we were given, but that's a different story. But it was, and that was great because I did that with Stefan Johansson. He was in the sister car at both of those events. So that was great at the time. Quite interesting at the time because a lot of the F1 guys were moving backwards and forwards. Damon, for example, drove the car. I think he drove Sean Walker's car. And when they came back, I think they all found them quite difficult to drive. They really were difficult to drive. They were phenomenally quick. And I don't think now even the current cars are going as quick as those cars were going at the time.
No, those, even obviously being very young at the time, I can remember those cars just absolutely flying, especially that one that you had. It just took off. It was an amazing thing to see.
There was probably an element of madness there, I have to say.
Couldn't possibly comment on.
It's dangerous, is it? But no, they were fantastic cars. I mean, you can't get away from that. And I think I was fortunate enough to be around at the time when it was brilliant. The television was brilliant, all BBC Grandstand. You had basically 5 channels at the time. And that made it a lot easier to try and sell investor sponsorship. As I said earlier on, the conversation of sponsorship is free money. Any investment sponsorship isn't free money. You have to do work. So 90% of what you do is making it happen. 10%, and that's back to you again, Ty, the question you asked, is actually making sure that you can do as much for the people that make that investment, whether it's time or money, make it work as much as you can for them.
Excellent, yeah. Sound advice, absolutely. I've just spotted we've got one of the current British touring car drivers is watching in. Michael Crease, you're probably aware he's got a huge following, and he's just joined BTC Racing this year from Team Hard, and he's just said simply, any tips? Now, I'm asking this on the proviso that we can have a chat with Michael Crease at some point, but he's just said, any tips for a current British touring car driver from someone who knows the ropes?
Yeah, it's easy, Michael. Hello, good to see you, good to hear from you. Go ever so fast. That's what you need to do. Go ever so fast, win races, easy. You know, what could be more easier than that?
There you go.
So a big thing about cars is setup of cars. Because once you get a good setup on a car, I've always said that the rule book in terms of setup, not in terms of regulations, but in terms of setup, is there as a guideline. What you can do from that is, and you're back down to driver and how you drive a car, is to try and make the car work as much as you can. Obviously, this is obvious stuff really. But most of my cars, the setup of my cars were quite different from most other drivers. I could always run a lot more rear brake than other people. So if you've got two cars going into the same corner, you can run more rear brake, you can get in deeper, means you can generally get in underneath people if you need to do that. So a lot of it is pre-work setup on the cars, and obviously you've got to be very fit. I think if you're physically fit, you're mentally fit. It's quite interesting with Bradley because we're fortunate enough to have a gym at home, and I'm in the gym every day, as is Bradley every day. I can't make him do that. He's doing that because that's important to him, and it's actually important when you get in a car. Because what I've always said is when you're in a car, and it is hard work. People think it's easy to drive a car. It's not. Michael, you'll know this. When you're in a car, there's a lot of mental stuff going on. If you're physically fit, you're mentally fit. I think most of the drivers out there are now much more physically fit. It's interesting because I think Schumacher was the first one that really got all the drivers going. He was so fit when he started, and everybody else was trying to catch him up if you're talking about Formula One. And I think in touring cars, I remember when I drove for Andy Rouse, he used to run so much caster on the wheels, you had to be like Popeye, because they didn't run power steering. I mean, you really had to be very strong in your arms to be able to get to turn the steering wheel.
Sure.
And if you didn't, within 3 laps, you were wishing you weren't there. Not wishing you weren't there, but you'd start to get lazy in the corners and all that sort of thing. The other thing which I think is very, very important is particularly in a championship series, nobody remembers the race, they always remember the championship. So you should drive to win the championship. If you're in a car that can't win, don't try and do silly things trying to overtake what you shouldn't overtake. You need to drive for points. And that's how I always looked at things. And I think I won 11 championships in cars, and probably about the same in motocross. So, that's a lot of championships to win. And I always thought about the championship. And it's true if you think about it. No one ever says, you won that race or wherever. They always say, well, he was champion in whatever year, and he won this, or he didn't win that, whatever it may be. So that is an answer for you. Hopefully that helps.
No, and I think any sort of touring car fans that are probably a bit younger and only into it in the last few years, they'll probably see that in like Colin Turkington. I think he's probably one who, he won't do anything silly just to get those points. And as you say, he's a back-to-back champion. He's a 4-time champion now. So, and he's always said that points is what wins you things, and obviously you just back that up. So,
I think you need, just to finish on that point, I think you need quite a lot of mind control to be able to do that, because we always want to win. If you're racing, you should be there and you should want to win. It's quite interesting with a lot of people, because I think a lot of people, if they got to that point where they can win, it's like a shock, particularly at a high level. It becomes like a shock, and that's very difficult. I remember the first time I led a Group A race, one of us, I was at Brands Hatch, and I'm driving around, having a lovely time, but working quite hard. And I remember going into paddock, looking at all these people, looking at me. But in actual fact, I then had to refocus. And if you can do that, it makes a big difference. It does make a difference.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think racing drivers, as you know, you're sort of born to sort of cross that line first, and then sometimes it's hard to reel it in, perhaps. I've got some for Bradley now, so we'll have a break, Rob. We've basically got Bradley. Do you have any plans to do any other endurance series races, either with or without Dad on board? Because you've just done the 12-hour enduro car at Snetterton.
We did, yeah.
Have you got any more plans to do that?
So I've got no plans to do any other endurance stuff other than the KA stuff, which, by the way, is absolutely brilliant fun. We're both involved with the team. The Almost Racers, it's a group of friends that have got together, and they're in the red and gold coloured KAs, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yep.
So no, I've not got any plans to do any other endurance. I'd love to, but at the moment I'm fully focused on getting into the mini. So it's really quite good actually, because it gives you quite a lot of track time. And they're very tricky cars to master because they're so slow. You sort of have to drive them a little bit differently to how you would drive a slightly faster car. You have to keep the speed up. So it really, really gets you working, and you sort of drive them on the limit all the time. And, you know, the fact you're only going out... For example, Snetterton, the first corner, you probably know, it's flat out. So you're flat out, and as you said, you sort of have to work yourself, don't you, really, with it? Because it's a crazy thing to think that first corner is absolutely planted. But yeah, they're great fun. But the answer to the question is no. I'm not planning on doing any other endurance stuff this year.
No.
Other than that.
The interesting thing with all of this actually is, what he doesn't know is he's actually doing Alton Park prior to the first round in the mini. So it'll give him an hour and a half around Alton Park. Seat time is invaluable.
Absolutely.
So he's doing that, but he doesn't know. I just told him he's doing that.
There you go.
That's with...
I might have had a hint.
That's a world exclusive.
Sport who are being absolutely brilliant. They run Mike Dobbin and all the guys at Almost Racers. They do a really good job. What's nice about that, actually, is that they're all having fun, which is what it was like when I first started racing. When it gets all serious, when it gets professional, it gets all very serious. More difficult to have fun, but it is still fun, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just seen another question that's popped up. We can ask that one later on. That's fine. Again, Bradley, which of your dad's old cars would you most like to get behind the wheel of? Obviously, we mentioned...
It's got to be that one straight behind me.
Yeah, I was going to say that's almost a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah, when Dad got the call about the Silverstone Classics, I was definitely packing my bag ready to go with my dad to jump in and show him how it's done.
Yeah.
I think that car, but I just... If I did ever get the opportunity to drive that car or the 89 car, which is now back in the Dick Johnson colours in the Shell Ultra, isn't it? I think the red and yellow colours. Either car's obviously that one behind me, but you just can't put the car at risk. You know, it would just, for me, it'd have to be just the pleasure of driving it. You know, it's too valuable as a thing. Not so it is an expensive car, but just you know, if I ever hurt it, I'd be so upset with myself. So just to drive it, I couldn't ever go silly or anything like that. But that would be the car for sure, definitely.
Yeah, I think there's probably quite a long line of people that would love to get in that one. Me for starters. It's not a hint, by the way. Again, Brady, you're obviously more of the modern era kind of racing. What preparation do you do before you go racing? Do you have any like routines or anything, put your left sock on before you ride or something, or anything like that?
I don't have any sort of lucky things or lucky underpants or anything like that. So the one thing that I do, I always struggle to sleep the night before. I'm always thinking about what I can do. So I always try and focus on getting enough sleep, eating properly leading up to an event, trying to get myself physically prepared. As Dad said earlier, I'm in the gym 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and I have a very strict routine that I stick to, and it's all about upper body and cardio, fitness and things like that. So I try and peak my fitness for that day, whenever that day happens to be. So I'll generally stop exercising several days before, up my diet of proteins and things that I need to eat just to get myself physically prepared. And as Dad says, if you're physically ready, you're mentally ready. And that's how I sort of look at it. And as I said earlier, I want to try and maximise that time as much as possible, because for me it's a privilege, it really is. But to get in a car, I want to get as much out of it as possible. So I need to be there both physically and mentally. So that's pretty much what my thought process is prior to an event.
Okay, cool. Obviously, you're in the minis this year, and I know you're going to obviously be wanting to win and everything. Win the championship and go full out if you can. Realistically, where are you kind of pitching it? Are you thinking because I obviously saw on your social media you're very happy with the tyre test you did at Snetterton.
Yes.
And has that really given you a real boost going into the year, thinking we can do something here?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there was no official timing on the day, so it's hard to actually place me amongst the other drivers. And also, as I'm sure you know, and anybody who followed the touring cars, the weather was horrendous. And especially on Thursday, it was, to be fair, we did get one semi-dry run, which was nice. But as you probably also know, I tested the JCW car, which is a bit of an animal, a bit of a baptism of fire, because it's been the first time I'd sort of got into a car for quite a long time, I wouldn't like to say I struggled, but it's definitely a difficult car, and I needed quite a lot of time. So I was quite apprehensive to get back in another Mini, being a little bit slower, principally the same car. Within 3 laps, I knew the car was spot on. It felt amazing. It was horrible conditions. Standing water. Snetterton's really bad for sort of standing puddles around the circuit. And within, like I say, within several laps, I picked up the car. I mean, Graves had put together an absolutely fantastic car. It was well balanced, fantastic turning. The biggest thing that I struggled with was the front wheel drive, was the oversteer issue in the JCW, which is quite prudent, and it wasn't like this in this car. And it felt planted. I felt confident, which is exactly what I wanted to feel. So that was we did 4 sessions throughout the day. The first session was sort of getting a feel for the car, as I just said. The second session, we got a semi-dry run, which was nice as well. And having had driven the KA around the circuit just the week before, having done almost 2 hours, I was quite familiar with most of the circuit, which was nice because Snetterton is a very, I think, tricky circuit, especially under the bridge. That's quite a hard complex. Around Coram as well. That's a tricky.
Yeah, is it Bronze and Coram? Yeah.
Yeah, really difficult, and I sort of struggled in the JCW through those corners. But having done that time in the KA, which is why I think it's such a fantastic series to be involved with, it gave me a lot of experience with the circuit. And the following week, when I got in the Mini, be it wet, and having not done a great deal of wet stuff recently, I felt pretty good. And as I said, I like to maximise the time as much as possible. And of course, I'm always going to shoot to try and win races. And who knows, maybe the championship, but that's the plan. If it happens, it does. If it doesn't, then so be it. But I'm shooting for the top, definitely.
I could just sort of interject there. We just talked about, Bradley mentioned Graves, and Carl and David and all the boys in Graves Motorsport. What they're very good at is actually looking after their drivers and making sure that they're comfortable, they feel confident, and all those other things. And this is a team sport. It's not just about the driver. Yes, it's down to the driver when they're actually in the car, but you still need to have the equipment. You need all the wheels pointing in the right direction. I'm being facetious, but you understand what I'm saying. So we're really excited to be working with them for the future, and I think it's the right place for Bradley to be.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's a good endorsement for the team. This is a question for both of you at the moment. Simply, do you prefer front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive?
Oh, that's easy. Rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
I'd probably say the same, to be honest. Yeah, I'd say the same. Definitely.
Yeah, fair enough.
More fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. It does look lively.
It's quite interesting. Let me expand on that question. Because when the Super Touring era started, 91, I was in a rear-wheel drive Sapphire. We then went to front-wheel drive, and I really didn't want to drive front-wheel drive. But eventually, they actually became really good. And what I found was with the front-wheel drive, quite often, when you try and develop the car, make it go faster, whatever you thought you should be doing, you do the opposite. It generally works. It got better than that, if you like. But actually, they ended up being really great cars to drive. They really were, and they were fast as well. I mean, when we took the Honda to Bathurst, Australia, we were doing 163 miles per hour down the Conrod Straight in a 2-litre. We were actually the fastest car because we had the least downforce in the car.
Wow.
It was 2 years old at the time.
And that's before they put the kink in the straight, isn't it?
No, the kink was in it.
Was the kink there and you were still... Wow.
That was flat in one of those. It was marginal in an RS500 flat because you had to stop it for the left. But it was still very fast. I mean, the RS500 was 189 miles an hour down there. But if you consider the little 2-litre engine, which was a normally aspirated engine, was running 326 horsepower, probably the most, at the time, it was the most powerful engine in Super Touring, with an 8,500 rev limit. The problem was they only lasted 500 kilometres, and then you had a £34,000 rebuild on that at that time, and that was 95, 96.
And that's obviously gone up a bit further than that now.
Yeah. So
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Another one for both of you. If you could pick one circuit in the world to race on that you haven't raced on as yet, which ones would you pick?
Well, I'm going to pass this across to Bradley first of all.
I would definitely say Bathurst, Mount Panorama for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely, 100%.
Definitely agree that one.
I just think it's an awesome circuit. Just the complex coming down the hill, Skyline, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, Rock Skyline.
When you go over there, all you see is sky, and you have to two-wheel the car down the cutting. So.
The other one that I don't know why, Laguna Saga, that's coming into my mind as well.
Oh, the corkscrew, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a similar, down through the. I tell you why. I used to play that.
I mean to say that Laguna Saga.
Laguna Saga. There we are.
It's like a saga going down the hill, I think.
Yeah, probably. I used to play it on the Xbox all the time on Forza, so I know that one pretty well. But I think out of the two, I'd still choose Bathurst, but that would be my second.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm no racing driver, but if I could pick two, I'd probably pick the same two, that and Spa, I think. But yeah.
I tell you,
Spa's a good one.
Very quick circuit about Bathurst. When I went there the first time, I was obviously in the RS500, and Neil Lowe was running the team. They were running 3 cars. And as I got up to the top of the mountain, they're Australian, their barriers are concrete walls. And there's a lot of blind turning when you drive there. You have to know the circuit. And as I'm going along the top of McPhillamy Park, the car started to pull to the left, seriously pulling to the left, and then the front left wheel fell off and bounced off and disappeared. It's still sitting on somebody's, I don't know where it is, on somebody's wall, I think, because they never found the wheel.
Wow.
They all go up there about a week before and dig all their tinnies in the ground. So they turn the end of the race, you've got the cans coming across the top. Anyway, so that was great. On the radio, I was really grumpy because I thought, this car's going so fast down the Conroy. Can you imagine if the wheel had fallen off down there?
Well, yeah.
I was really grumpy.
Doesn't bear thinking about.
So clearly, I said, the wheels, just front left wheels falling off. And he came back on the radio and he said, well, have you hit anything? So I said, well, no. He said, well, that's okay, mate. That's driver training. And that's the end of that. Driver training. As long as you haven't hit nothing, that's driver training.
Wow.
And of course, driving, I've had lots of wheels, centre lock wheels falling off, which isn't correct, obviously, but it's just sort of what happens, particularly when you're doing bit shots and stuff like that.
Wow.
So shall I tell you the circuit that I think is probably the most outrageous circuit? Which sadly currently isn't used. Well, I'm not sure if it's used or not. Would be Nürburgring, the long Nürburgring.
Yeah, the Nordschleife for the.
At the small Nürburgring when I drove for Mercedes and DTM, but I didn't do the long circuit. But that would have been a great circuit. I mean, probably really dangerous, is why they stopped it.
Yeah.
In certain places they'd be airborne, wouldn't they? That was an outrageous circuit.
Yeah.
But in terms of Bathurst, has to be probably number one. Macau is brilliant. I mean, Macau is a brilliant circuit.
Yeah.
If you get it wrong, then it hurts.
I'll say that hairpin at Macau looks a bit.
Yeah.
Something else. How on earth anyone gets around that? It's amazing setup on the car.
Quick story. I drove for Watson's Water, and we took the 2 cars over to Macau. I'd not been there, but they selected who they think may be the fastest drivers in that particular time period. And Stefan Johansson was my teammate. And the guy that was running Watson's Water, Brian, I can't remember his surname now, in the first qualifying session, mindful of the fact I could only drive around at 25 miles an hour, and there were all parked cars around the circuit. I think I was something like 5th in the first qualifying session, or 2 qualifying sessions. And then at the start of the second qualifying session, he came up to my window, banged on the window just before we were going out. He said, look, we need this car on the front row. So I'll give you £10,000, this is a true story, if you put this car on pole. So I said, all right then.
Yeah, that's a carrot.
But we used to run qualifying tyres then. In that period, we were on qualifiers. And qualifiers were an art. To get those qualifiers to work, you needed to switch them on at the beginning of the lap, and hopefully they'd be just about finished by the end of the lap. So going into the hairpin corner that you mentioned, as you go into the hairpin, there's a slight hump. And what you did is you brake before the hump, so you braked into the road. Then you went over the hump, and it managed to get the car to, stop for the hairpin. But of course, I wanted this money, so I was still on it. I took over the hump. I'm still on the throttle over the hump. And as I landed, I thought, I'm not going to stop the car. So I braked, because you've only got one lap on the tyres. And as you go into the hairpin, because there's lots of accidents, there's a runoff coming backwards. And I braked, knocked all the wheels up, and I hit the barrier square on sideways, which gave me a perfect line for the hairpin. And I made the hairpin, and I missed it by, don't quote me on this, it was something like a tenth of a second, around a huge rock. I was on the front row, but the deal was it needed to be on pole for the £10,000. And no matter how much I was nice to him, I didn't get the £10,000. No. But anyway, that's a true story.
Wow.
And
that's
the
amazing.
Were finished. The qualifiers were really not good from about.
Did you do much damage to the car when you hit it?
No, it was lovely. I used to use when we did the Birmingham Super Through, teams used to get really grumpy because they had so much power coming out the corners. I'd use the barriers to straighten the car up. Just as a scrape through the car. Sorry, Zach. I know you've got that car, but it's all right.
I did see a question actually just about the Birmingham Super Prix. It just popped up. Was it something that you enjoyed, or did you think it was a bit gimmicky? I think the person who asked it might have thought it was a bit of a gimmick. But did you enjoy the Super Prix in Birmingham?
No, I don't think it was a gimmick. I think it was brilliant for.
I think it was great.
Brilliant for Birmingham because it brought Birmingham. Not that it needed to be brought to life because it doesn't, but it was great because it was very topical at the time to have all of that. And I thought it was a fantastic event. It's a shame it eventually got stopped. It's a bit like when we did Wellington, the street race at Wellington. That was a fantastic, like Windy City. Fantastic event, and everybody stopped for it. I think motorsport in New Zealand is quite different because that would make Saturday night at 8:30. All the chat shows and stuff. They're iconic stars. It's a bit like Dick Johnson we talked about, Peter Brock historically.
Yeah.
You drive down the road and there'll be a picture of them going like this. Go and buy your hamburgers over here, or go and buy your Mobil 1 if it's Peter Brock, or Shell Ultra over here. Not quite the same in this country, but yes.
That kind of so it was I always enjoyed it whenever it was on TV. That and Formula 3000, it was always great fun.
Not sure how safe it was necessarily.
Sorry?
I'm not sure how safe it was necessarily.
Well, that's
1,000 cars ended up going through the wall, took off and punched its way through a warehouse wall. But anyway, apart from that, it seems to be right.
Apart from that, it's fine. Very quickly, this has come up a few times. Was there any truth behind the rumour that you were going to return to BTCC fairly recently? I think someone's just asked about Motorbase with a question mark. I don't know if that was anything that was.
It is true, but it wasn't necessarily Motorbase. It wasn't.
Fine.
I'm not going to say it was because I don't think that would be proven.
No, absolutely fine. No problem there.
On a number of occasions, it was a strong possibility, and I thought it would be quite cool to go back. But if I go back, I want to be in a good team with a good car and all the rest of it. I think it's quite interesting. I drove a TCR car very recently, actually, an Audi TCR car. And they got an awful lot of grip, albeit that I did spin it twice in the first lap I went out, but that's a different story. But they got an awful lot of grip, those cars. But I think what is crucial to those cars is the setup of them. I think there's a lot you can do to them to make them not necessarily easy to drive, because quite often an easy car isn't the fastest car, but to actually make the tyres live, certainly for the driving that the guys have to do nowadays. So yes, there was, and yes, I would have done it. And you know what, I probably would go back, because I'm not the youngest person, but my eyes seem to work all right still. I don't have to wear glasses. I don't know why I don't. Just means I can't see anything now. The seats have been tested and all the rest of it. And I keep my fitness up. So I probably would go back even now, because that would be quite cool. But I'd need to go back and be in a competitive environment.
Well, that could be interesting. We never know who's tuned in. You never know. There might be.
Well, the problem is with that, if Bradley's in another car and he's quicker than me, then I'll never forgive him, obviously.
That's a good point. Yeah, you can't be showing up.
I'm going to do something special.
The sons can do that with their father, you see, so it's sort of all right, isn't it?
It's allowed.
Until it happens, and it's not all right.
Just got another couple of ones before we wrap up for this session, because it's been on for an hour, which has been great. What have we got? To both of you, who would you like as your teammate if you could pick anyone from history or presently? And I assume that is across any kind of motorsport. Who would you like to have as your teammate?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, because I'm not sure.
Well, this would never have happened, I don't think, but Ayrton Senna would be great. I think it was probably very difficult to work with, he was very quick, but he would aspire you to probably go faster than maybe you thought you could have gone. I don't think he was probably the easiest person. You know, sadly, I never met Ayrton. I wish I had met him, and I never met him. I met most of the guys, but never Ayrton. We were supposed to be doing something, because when McLaren was running with Ayrton in the car, they were Shell, and we were Shell. And we had to do a thing, Mike presented it actually, it was Shell, I think it was Silverstone actually, and then we did something at Shell House in the city. And Ayrton was supposed to go to the Silverstone one, but Gerhard Berger turned up, so it was done with Gerhard. He was equally a very nice person, obviously.
Sure.
He achieved a lot in his time in race cars, but I think Ayrton would be great. But of course that would never have happened. So the realism of finding someone that you can trust, nobody. Just joking. I think I'll come back to I liked driving. It's quite difficult when I drove for Dynamics with Matt, but I like Matt a lot. So if Matt's listening, still liking Matt, so that's all right. And we talk reasonably regularly. Yeah, but there are some drivers I think you have to work as a team. I think it's important, because if you've got, and we're doing this with Graves at the moment, if you've got more than one head bringing information in, you share that information, in theory you can start stepping up. So it's useful to have more than one car running, useful to have a teammate that, you know, there are a lot of drivers that are very fast in cars, but maybe not particularly good at making their cars better. I think you've probably got an element of that going on in all forms of racing. If you can have somebody that is very good at development and you can learn from those people, I was always of the belief that someone could give me a tenth of a second from over there, I took it. Don't know where it came from. If it came from over there, I took it because I wanted it, because it made me faster. And I think Bradley's got that, hopefully got that going on as well. Doesn't matter where the information. You have to be cautious that you don't try and seek the information because people will give you bad information.
Right. Sure.
Maybe you can trust as much as you can, because they want to win as well, don't they? So, but I'll pass you across to Bradley.
Yeah, it's something I've never really thought about. So I've never really had any sort of teammates that that I can think of. I would probably say you, to be honest with you, because I think you'd probably help me more than I can think of anybody else would at the moment, sort of this early stage in my career. So I'd probably have to say Dad. And actually, we kind of are in some way, aren't we? I would say in the enduro stuff that we've been doing.
Well, I think what's important with, I mean, if you look at what Bradley's done, we did Super 1 for 2 years, and that was great. Right in the deep end, because he did no pub racing, and he got beat up in the first year like you can't believe. Because a lot of the F1 guys, you know, the Albons and Hamilton, they were all doing that series. But with Ultimate Car Control, because we, as you know, we teach it, we have a company that teaches it in all levels. We don't do learner drivers, but anything else related to driving, we do it. And we like to do the high performance stuff as well. So Bradley's driven a lot of cars, and not because he's sitting here, but he is a very good instructor. He can get into people's heads. And actually the way people work slightly differently, but the process has to become a subliminal reactive process. So when something's going on, you just have to know what's going on. And the only way you can know what's going on is to understand definitively what is going on underneath you. So he has a level of car control which is very good. That probably, most of that has come from me, because particularly a dynamic element, that's what we deliver across the board. So when I talk to him about a particular corner, he can relate to what I am saying. It's quite interesting, without we should talk too much about this, but when you have an engineer, you need to have an engineer that also understands what's going on. Engineers are massively intelligent people, but my opinion is you have to have an engineer that understands what it's like to drive a car. Because if they understand that, they could maybe sometimes be even better than what most of them are anyway. So we're in a fortunate position where I actually want him to do well, obviously, because I'm his father. And if he listens, he can either do what I say or disregard it. It's up to him at the end of the day to make those decisions. And that'll be different for every car, but the principle is always the same. Doesn't matter what the car is, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or four-wheel drive. The principles of dynamics are the same. The nuances change. So even last week in the test, I'd like to think that when he came in, we talked about a couple of corners in particular. He made the changes and he went faster, and he actually went significantly faster just by changing what he did, because he knows that if I tell him to do something, I'll explain the reasons why. He understands the reasons why. He just goes and does it. So from that point of view, in theory, that should be advantageous. Until we're on the track in the same series and doing the same thing. And of course, I'll give him bad information because I don't go faster than me, obviously.
Oh, that's excellent. Great. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up for the evening. But obviously, we've got a few more things we want to discuss about motorsport in general. So we may have to schedule a second chat at some point in the not too distant future if you'd be up for that one.
Well, I think that would be great, and be interesting with some of our opinions. And although I'm not opinionated, actually I am quite opinionated. So yeah, that might lead us to other things as well. So if we get invited back, that would be brilliant.
Yep.
And we can talk about either some of the historic stuff with what I've done, or talk about some of the current stuff that's going on in the world of motorsport.
I think that would be a good thing to discuss, to cover everything. That would be great.
I think one of the things that would be quite interesting to talk about is sponsorship or investment. And I know Ty, if you're still watching, you ask those questions. And there's quite a lot of stuff that could be discussed around that and what you should do, how you should do it, to try and retain those people. Because without those people, a lot of the guys out there currently probably wouldn't be able to do what they do.
No, sure. Great. No,
Thank you
for having us.
I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yes, for just some of the comments, everyone's been saying that it's been very good, very informative. So it looks like it's gone well. So we'll try and sort something out in the near future.
Yes, good to talk to you.
See you next time.
Thanks very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Good night.